The potato peels fell into the sink with soft thuds as Daniel worked his way through dinner preparations. His daughter Amy sat at the kitchen table behind him, pencil scratching against paper as she worked through her math homework. The wind outside rattled the windows of their small homestead, carrying with it the sharp cold that made this colony world feel so far from Earth. "Dad, what's 7 times 8? Amy asked without looking up. "What do you think it is?" Daniel replied, cutting the potatoes into chunks. 56? "That's right, sweetheart." Daniel smiled as he dropped the potatoes into the pot of water. 2 years had passed since Rebecca died, and some days still felt like walking through thick mud. But moments like these, simple and quiet, helped. Amy was growing up strong, and that was what mattered. That was what Rebecca would have wanted. He turned on the stove and reached for the meat he'd thawed earlier. The colony didn't offer much variety, but he could make a decent stew. Amy loved his stew, especially on cold nights like this. The first thud against the front door made him freeze. It wasn't a knock. It was heavy, almost like something large had bumped into the reinforced metal. Daniel set down the knife and listened. Amy had stopped writing. The second thud was harder, more deliberate. "Dad?" Amy's voice was small. "It's okay, baby. Stay there." Daniel wiped his hands on a towel and moved toward the door. The homestead was far from the main colony settlement, surrounded by empty fields and rocky hills. Neighbors were few and far between. Nobody just dropped by, especially not after dark. Another thud, and this time a sound came with it. A low, pained groan that didn't sound human. Daniel's heart kicked into a faster rhythm. He opened the cabinet near the door and pulled out his plasma rifle. The weapon felt heavy in his hands. He'd only fired it twice since moving here, both times at wild animals trying to get into the chicken coop. "Amy, go to your room. Lock the door." "But Dad..." "Now, sweetheart, please." Amy's chair scraped against the floor. Her footsteps hurried down the hallway, and Daniel heard her bedroom door close with a soft click. He approached the front door and activated the external camera display on the wall panel. The screen flickered to life, showing the porch in grainy night vision. At first, Daniel couldn't make sense of what he was seeing. Something massive blocked most of the camera's view, scales dark and dull covered in old scars. The creature shifted, and Daniel caught sight of a long neck, a wedge-shaped head with horns and eyes that reflected the porch light like a cat's. A dragon. A real dragon right outside his door. Daniel had seen pictures, of course. Everyone in the colony had been briefed about the native species when they first arrived. The Sirath, they were called. Intelligent, nomadic, dangerous. The briefings had been clear. Avoid contact, report sightings, do not engage. But the dragons usually stayed in the mountain ranges, far from human settlements. What was one doing here? The creature moved closer to the door, and Daniel heard it clearly now. A voice, speaking in broken Galactic Common, the trade language used across the settled systems. "Please." The word was strained, almost gasping. "My child hungers. I smell your food, please." Daniel's finger hovered over the rifle's safety. His mind raced. This was insane. Opening the door could get him killed. Could get Amy killed. Every instinct screamed at him to trigger the alarm to call for help from the colony security. But that voice, it wasn't the growl of a predator. It was the plea of something desperate. "Move back from the door," Daniel called out, his voice steadier than he felt. "Move where I can see you better." There was a pause, then the scraping sound of claws against the porch boards. The massive shape retreated, and the camera caught more of the creature's form. She was huge, easily the size of his entire house. But her scales looked wrong, dull and flaky. One of her wings hung at an odd angle, wrapped crudely with what looked like torn fabric. And pressed against her chest, barely visible, was something much smaller. A baby. She had a baby. Daniel's throat went tight. He moved to the window beside the door and looked out directly. The dragon mother was staring at him with eyes that held something he recognized immediately. He'd seen it in his own mirror after Rebecca died. He'd seen it in Amy's face during the hardest nights. Pure, desperate fear, the terror of a parent who couldn't protect their child. The dragon mother shifted, and with one careful claw she lifted the small bundle away from her chest just enough for Daniel to see. The baby dragon was tiny compared to its mother, barely the size of a large dog. Its scales were flaking off, its breathing shallow. The little creature didn't even move. "My child," the mother said again, her voice breaking. "Starving. Wing broken. Cannot hunt, please, I beg. Daniel's hand shook on the rifle. Every logical part of his brain told him to shut the blinds, lock down the house, and wait for help. But he kept seeing that tiny dragon, dying in its mother's arms. He kept hearing that voice, so full of anguish it transcended species. He thought of Amy in her room, scared and alone. He thought of what he would do if she was the one starving. How far he would go, what he would risk. The answer was simple: anything, everything. Daniel took a deep breath and lowered the rifle. His hand went to the door lock. If you try anything, he said loudly, I will defend my daughter. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. I swear no harm. Only food, please. Daniel's fingers closed around the lock release. Rebecca had always said he had too soft a heart. Maybe she was right. Maybe this would get him killed. But he couldn't watch a child die, not even an alien child, not when he had the power to help. The lock clicked open and Daniel pulled the door wide. The cold air rushed into the house as the door swung open. Daniel stood in the doorway, rifle still in hand but pointed at the ground. The dragon mother remained where she was, several feet back from the entrance. Up close, she was even more massive than the camera had shown. Her head alone was larger than Daniel's entire torso. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. Daniel could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. The dragon's breath came in visible clouds in the freezing air, ragged and painful sounding. You opened, she said, and there was surprise in her voice. You truly opened. I haven't decided anything yet, Daniel replied, trying to keep his voice firm. Show me your child. Slowly. The dragon mother lowered her massive head and carefully adjusted her forearms. The baby dragon she'd been holding slipped forward, and Daniel got his first clear look at the little creature. It was dying. There was no other word for it. The hatchling's ribs showed through papery scales. Its eyes were closed, and each breath seemed like a struggle. One tiny claw twitched weakly, but otherwise it lay still. Daniel felt his resolve crumble. He'd seen enough death to recognize it approaching. This baby had days at most, maybe less. How long has it been since he ate? Daniel asked. She, the mother, corrected quietly. Her name is Pip, 5 days since proper food. Small prey only. Not enough. Never enough. The dragon's voice cracked. I try, my wing, it is broken. Cannot fly, cannot hunt large game. I try with small, but she needs more. She is in growing time, needs so much more. Daniel looked at the makeshift bandage wrapped around the dragon's wing. Blood had soaked through in several places, and the wing hung at an angle that made his own shoulder ache in sympathy. What happened to you? He asked. Plasma storm. 3 weeks passed. The dragon mother's eyes closed briefly, pain flickering across her alien features. My mate, Torin. He shielded us with his wings. The lightning burned him. He died so Pip and I could live. The words hit Daniel harder than he expected. He knew that kind of sacrifice. He knew that kind of loss. I'm sorry, he said, and meant it. The dragon's eyes opened again, and something like surprise crossed her face. You understand this feeling? My wife died 2 years ago. Saved a dozen people when our shuttle lost pressure. She made sure everyone else got to the emergency pod first. Daniel's throat tightened. She ran out of time for herself. They stood in silence, two parents who understood grief in a way that crossed all boundaries of species and language. The wind howled around them, but neither moved. My name is Solara, the dragon mother finally said. Of the Sereth people. I watched your home for 1 full day before I approached. I was afraid. We are taught humans are dangerous, killers of my kind. But I smelled your food cooking, and I knew you had young one inside. I thought perhaps a parent would understand another parent. Daniel lowered the rifle completely. I'm Daniel. The child inside is Amy, she's 7. Pip is 3 seasons. Still so small. Still needs her mother. Solara's voice dropped to almost a whisper. I am failing her. I cannot provide. Every day she grows weaker and I can do nothing. The desperate helplessness in those words broke something in Daniel. He'd felt that same powerlessness watching Rebecca die, unable to stop it, unable to fix it. But this right now he could actually do something about Solara. Daniel said, making the decision even as he spoke. I can't fit you through this door. You're too big. But can you pass Pip to me? Solara's head jerked back slightly. Pass her to you? I have food, lots of it. Meat, protein, everything a growing child needs. I can feed her while I cook more. But I need her inside where it's warm. For several heartbeats, Solara didn't move. Daniel realized what he was asking. He was asking this mother to hand over her dying child to an alien stranger, to trust completely, with no guarantee except his word. "If you harm her," Solara said slowly, "I will die destroying you and everything you love. This I swear." "If I wanted to harm you, I would have called security already," Daniel replied. "I'm a father who knows what you're feeling right now. Let me help." Solara stared at him for what felt like an eternity. Then, with movements so careful they were almost painful to watch, she lifted Pip in her massive claws and extended the tiny dragon toward Daniel. Daniel set the rifle aside and reached out. His hands looked absurdly small next to Solara's claws, but she lowered Pip into his arms with incredible gentleness. The baby dragon weighed almost nothing, just skin and fragile bones. Her scales felt like dry paper against his hands. "She was so cold, I've got her," Daniel said softly. "I've got her, Solara." Solara's eyes were fixed on her child with an intensity that could have melted steel. Daniel turned and carried Pip into the house. Behind him, he heard Solara shift, and when he glanced back, he saw she'd stretched her long neck through the doorway. Her head was now inside the house, eyes never leaving Pip. "Amy," Daniel called. "Amy, it's okay. You can come out now." Amy's door opened a crack. "Dad, come here, sweetheart. We have guests who need our help." Amy emerged slowly, her eyes going wide when she saw Solara's massive head in their living room and the tiny dragon in Daniel's arms. But she didn't scream. She didn't run. Instead, she walked closer, her face full of wonder and concern. "Is the baby sick?" Amy asked. "Very sick," Daniel replied. "She needs food. Can you help me cook?" Amy nodded solemnly. "What does she eat?" Daniel looked at Solara, whose eyes were now wet with tears that caught the kitchen light. "Everything we have," he said. "We're going to feed this little one everything we have." Daniel carried Pip to the kitchen table and gently laid her on a nest of clean towels Amy quickly gathered. The baby dragon's breathing was so shallow that twice Daniel checked to make sure she was still alive. Solara's enormous head followed their every movement. Her neck stretched as far through the doorway as it would reach. "Amy, turn the heating unit up to maximum," Daniel instructed as he rushed back to the stove. The potatoes were still boiling, but he abandoned them and grabbed every package of meat from the cold storage. Chicken, beef, the rabbit he'd caught last week. All of it went onto the counter. "What do dragons eat?" Amy asked, standing on a chair to reach the heating unit controls. "Is it the same as us?" "Meat," Solara answered from the doorway, her voice rough. "We need much meat. Bones too, if possible. Pip is in fast growth. She should eat twice her weight each day, but I cannot provide even quarter of that." "Twice her weight?" Daniel looked at the tiny dragon on his table. Even starved, she probably weighed 20 pounds. That meant 40 pounds of food every day. No wonder Solara couldn't keep up with a broken wing. Daniel's mind raced as he pulled out his largest pots. He filled one with water and the chicken, another with the beef and rabbit. He threw in bones, vegetables, everything that would make a rich, nutritious broth. As the pots began to heat, he grabbed eggs from the cooler and started cracking them into a bowl. "The eggs, can she eat raw?" Daniel asked. "Yes, everything raw is good, but warm is better, easier for sick stomach." Daniel whisked the eggs and poured them into a heated pan. The smell of cooking food filled the kitchen, and for the first time Pip stirred. Her nostrils flared weakly, and one eye cracked open just a slit. "She smells it," Solara breathed. "Pip, my little fire!" "Food is coming." Amy had climbed down and was now sitting next to Pip, gently stroking the baby dragon's head with one finger. "It's okay," Amy whispered. "My dad's the best cook. He's going to make you all better." Pip's eye focused on Amy, and the tiniest chirp escaped her throat. Amy's face lit up with joy. "Dad, she made a sound!" "I heard, sweetheart." Daniel worked faster, stirring the eggs until they were soft and fluffy. He scraped them into a bowl and brought it to the table. "Solara, how do I feed her? By hand?" "She can eat if food is close. She has strength for that. Put near her mouth." Daniel held the bowl under Pip's nose. The little dragon's nostrils flared again, wider this time. Her mouth opened, revealing tiny sharp teeth, and she weakly pulled a mouthful of eggs into her mouth. Then another. Then she was eating steadily, small chirping sounds coming from her throat. Solara made a sound Daniel had never heard before, a deep rumbling that vibrated through the walls. It took him a moment to realize she was crying. "Thank you," Solara whispered. "Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, small Amy, thank you." Don't thank us yet, Daniel said, though his own eyes were burning. We've got a lot more cooking to do. For the next hour, Daniel's kitchen became a production line. As soon as one pot of meat finished cooking, he started another. Amy helped by shredding the cooled meat into bite-sized pieces for Pip. The baby dragon ate everything they gave her, her movements growing stronger with each bowl. While they worked, Saylara told them her story. Her people, the Serath, traveled in family groups across the mountain ranges, following the seasonal migrations of large prey animals. She and Torin had been making the journey to the breeding valleys when the plasma storm struck. They'd been caught in the open, no shelter in sight. Torin was strong, Saylara said, her voice distant with memory. He wrapped his wings around us and told me to hold Pip tight. The lightning hit his back again and again. I felt each strike through his body. When the storm passed, he could not move. He lived for 2 more days, but the burns were too deep. She paused. His last words were to protect Pip, to keep her alive no matter what. And you have, Daniel said firmly. You're here. You found help. That's protecting her. I was taught humans were monsters, Saylara admitted, that you take land and kill anything in your path. My clan elders said to avoid your settlements that you would shoot us on sight. Daniel flipped the meat in the pan, uncomfortable with the truth in her words. Some humans probably would. We're not perfect. We've done terrible things, my people. But most of us just want to live our lives, raise our kids, and not hurt anyone. Like Sarath, Saylara said quietly. We are taught you are monsters. You are taught we are monsters. But here we are, 2 parents trying to save our children. Amy carried another bowl of shredded meat to Pip, who eagerly dove into it. The baby dragon was moving much more now, her head lifting properly, her tail giving small twitches. The color was returning to her scales. She looks better already, Amy said happily. Are you feeling better, Pip? Pip chirped in response, and Amy giggled. I think that's yes. Daniel pulled the latest batch of meat from the pot and began preparing it. His emergency stores were getting low, but he didn't care. He'd worry about that tomorrow. Tonight, a child was being saved. Saylara, Daniel said as he worked. Your wing needs treatment. I can see the blood from here. Wing can wait. Pip must eat first. Pip is eating. And she'll need you healthy to take care of her afterward. I have medical supplies. Not for dragons specifically, but basic stuff. Antibiotics, wound cleaners, splinting materials. I used to treat injured animals back on Earth before we moved here. Saylara was quiet for a long moment. You would help me as well? Not just Pip? You're her mother. She needs you. Daniel met Sayara's eyes. And you came here desperate and terrified, but you didn't threaten us. You didn't try to force your way in. You asked. You trusted us with your child. That means something. In Serath culture, Saylara said slowly, debts must be honored. You are saving Pip's life, saving mine. This debt is beyond measure. I'm not asking for payment, Saylara. I'm just doing what's right. Sayara's eyes gleamed in the kitchen light. Then you truly are different from what I was taught. And I will remember this, Daniel of humans. My clan will remember. Pip chirped loudly and Amy laughed, the sound bright and pure in the warm kitchen. Outside the wind still howled, but inside something new was being built. Something that went beyond species or fear or old teachings. Inside, 2 families were becoming one. 3 hours had passed and Daniel's entire stock of emergency meat was gone. Pip had eaten 6 full meals, each one larger than the last. Now she lay curled on a pile of blankets near the heating unit, her sides rising and falling in steady, healthy breaths. Her scales had regained their shine, and she occasionally made small, contented sounds in her sleep. Amy sat cross-legged beside Pip, a book open in her lap. She was reading aloud, one of her favorite stories about a brave mouse who sailed across the ocean. Pip's eyes would occasionally crack open to watch Amy's face as she read, then close again peacefully. Daniel stood at the doorway with a box of medical supplies, looking at Saylara. The dragon mother hadn't moved from her position, still stretched through the entrance with her eyes fixed on her daughter. But Daniel could see the pain in every line of her body. The injured wing trembled occasionally and her breathing was tight. Saylara, I need to look at that wing, Daniel said gently. Can you back up outside? I'll come out to you. Saylara hesitated, her gaze flickering between Pip and Daniel. The instinct to stay close to her child was clearly warring with her trust in these humans who had saved Pip's life. Amy will watch her, Daniel promised. Amy, can you keep Pip company? Sure, Dad. Amy looked up from her book. We're just getting to the good part anyway. Right, Pip? Pip chirped softly, and that seemed to decide it. Solara slowly withdrew her neck from the doorway, backing out onto the porch. Daniel grabbed a coat and the medical kit, then stepped outside, pulling the door mostly closed behind him to keep the heat in. The cold hit him immediately, but he ignored it. Solara had settled onto the ground, her massive form coiled to fit in the yard. Under the porch lights, Daniel could see just how badly injured she really was. Besides the obviously broken wing, she had scores of smaller wounds across her hide, burns, cuts, and patches where scales had been torn away. "How are you even still alive?" Daniel asked, kneeling beside her injured wing. "Will. Stubbornness. Pip." Solara's voice was heavy with exhaustion. "I could not let her die." "Would not. So I did not allow myself to die either." Daniel carefully unwrapped the crude bandage around the wing. The sight underneath made him wince. The wing membrane was torn in several places, and the bones were definitely broken, poorly set at awkward angles. Infection had set in, the flesh around the wounds hot and swollen. "This is bad, Solara. Really bad. I'm not a doctor and definitely not for dragons. I can clean it and give you antibiotics, but you might need actual medical help. There are colony physicians." "No." Solara's voice was firm. "No human physicians. They would report me. Colony security would come. I would be studied, caged, or killed. Pip would be taken." Daniel wanted to argue, but he understood. He'd seen how the colony treated anything they considered a potential threat. And a dragon, even an injured one, would definitely be seen as a threat. "Okay," Daniel said. "Then we do this my way. It's going to hurt. I have known worse pain." Daniel opened his medical kit and pulled out disinfectant, antibiotics, and clean bandages. He'd set bones before, mostly on farm animals, but never anything this large. Still, the principles were the same. He just had to be careful and thorough. As he worked, cleaning the wounds and preparing to reset the bones, Solara spoke. "Why do you live so far from other humans? This homestead is isolated. After Rebecca died, being around people was hard. Everyone looking at us with pity. Everyone trying to help when nothing could actually help. I took a job out here raising livestock for the colony. It's quiet. It's simple. It's what Amy and I needed." Daniel poured disinfectant over a particularly nasty cut, and Solara hissed but didn't move. "What about you? Do the Serath usually travel in small groups?" "Family units, yes. Mother, father, offspring. We meet with larger clans several times a year for breeding season and winter shelter. But mostly we travel alone. The mountains are vast and prey is spread thin. Too many hunters in one place would mean starvation for all. So you and Torin were raising Pip alone? Yes, it is our way. Young dragons learn from parents, learn to hunt, to fly, to survive. When they reach maturity, they find mates and begin their own journeys." Solara's voice softened. Torin was teaching Pip to glide before the storm. She would leap from rocks, spread her little wings, and he would catch her if she fell. She loved it. She was so happy. Daniel felt his chest tighten. Amy was learning to ride a bike when Rebecca died. Rebecca would run alongside, holding the seat, promising not to let go. Amy still has the bike, but she hasn't ridden it since. They fell silent, the only sounds the wind and Daniel's hands working on Solara's wing. He could feel the weight of their shared grief. Two parents who'd had to carry on alone, who'd had to be strong for small ones who didn't understand why the world had suddenly become so much darker. "I must set these bones now," Daniel said quietly. "This is going to be the worst part." "Do it." Daniel took a breath and gripped the largest broken bone. With careful pressure, he pulled and twisted, feeling the bone shift back into alignment. Solara made a sound like grinding stone, her whole body going rigid, but she held perfectly still. Daniel worked quickly, setting each break as best he could, then splinting them with lightweight metal rods from his kit. By the time he finished wrapping the wing in clean bandages and setting up a proper sling, both he and Solara were shaking. Daniel from effort and cold, Solara from pain. "Done," Daniel said, sitting back on his heels. "The antibiotics will take a day or two to really kick in, but this should start healing properly now. You'll need to keep the wing completely still for at least 4 weeks, maybe 6. 6 weeks? Solara sounded alarmed. That long? Dragon bones might heal faster than human ones, I don't know. But broken bones take time. You won't be flying anywhere for a while." Solara's head dropped, her exhaustion and worry obvious. "Where will we go? We cannot stay in your home. We are too large." "The cold will—" "My barn," Daniel interrupted. "It's insulated, has heating, plenty of space. I'll set it up for you and Pip tonight. You can stay as long as you need. Daniel, this is too much. You have already... Solara, look at me. Daniel waited until her massive eyes met his. You came to my door because you had nowhere else to go. Because your child was dying and you were desperate enough to ask an enemy for help. I understand that desperation. If Amy was sick and I had to beg a dragon for help, I'd do it in a heartbeat. So you're staying, you're going to heal, and we're going to figure this out together, okay? Solara stared at him for a long moment, then slowly lowered her head until her snout was inches from Daniel. It was a gesture of respect, he realized, of gratitude so deep it transcended words. You have my oath, Daniel of humans. You and small Amy have my protection for all your days. Any who would harm you would have to go through me first. This I swear by Torin's memory. Daniel reached out and gently touched her scaled forehead. Let's just focus on getting you and Pip healthy. Then we can worry about oaths and protection. From inside the house, Amy's voice called out, Dad, Pip woke up and she wants more food. And I think she likes my story. Despite everything, both Daniel and Solara found themselves making sounds that might have been laughter. Daniel stood, his knees cracking, and offered Solara his hand to help her up. She looked at the small human hand, then carefully placed one claw against it, and together they rose to face what came next. The barn was larger than it looked from outside. Daniel had built it himself when they first moved to the homestead, designed to hold livestock through the harsh winters. Now, as he swept out the main area and laid down fresh bedding, he was grateful for the extra space. Solara watched from the barn entrance, too tired to help but unwilling to be far from Pip, who Amy was currently walking around the yard. The baby dragon was significantly stronger after her meals, able to walk on wobbly legs and even attempt small hops. Amy held one of Pip's tiny claws, guiding her carefully and cheering each time Pip managed 3 steps without stumbling. Left side is clear, Daniel called, spreading the last of the thick bedding material across the floor. He'd piled it deep, creating a soft nest large enough for Solara to curl up in comfortably. The heating units along the walls hummed steadily, pushing warm air into every corner. Daniel had also hauled in several large containers of water and every remaining scrap of food from his cold storage. It wasn't much, but it would get them through the next day. After that, he'd have to figure something out. Maybe hunting, though he wasn't very good at it. Maybe a trip to the colony market, though explaining why he suddenly needed 5 times his normal meat order would raise questions. This is too much, Solara said quietly. Your generosity shames me. I have nothing to offer in return. You don't need to offer anything. This is what neighbors do. Daniel set up a low table with the food containers within easy reach of where Solara would rest. Besides, once you're healed, you can help me with hunting. I'm terrible at it, but I bet you're incredible. I was. Before. Solara's eyes went to her splinted wing. Now I am useless. You're not useless. You're healing. There's a difference. Daniel finished his work and stepped back to survey the space. It looked good. Warm, comfortable, safe. Come on. Let's get you settled before Amy exhausts Pip completely. They walked outside together and Daniel called to his daughter. Amy, bring Pip inside. It's bedtime. But Dad, we were just starting a new game. Tomorrow. I promise. Amy sighed dramatically but gently guided Pip toward the barn. The baby dragon chirped and bounded ahead on her short legs, clearly excited by the new space. She immediately began exploring, sniffing everything and making little rumbling sounds of approval. Solara followed her daughter inside, moving carefully to avoid bumping her injured wing against the doorframe. Once inside, she circled the bedding area once, then settled down with a deep sigh. Pip immediately scrambled up and curled against her mother's side, tucking herself under Solara's good wing. Perfect fit, Amy announced happily. See, Dad? They love it. I'm glad. Daniel crouched down to Amy's level. But now you need to get to bed too. It's way past your bedtime. Can I come back tomorrow? To play with Pip? We'll see. First, we need to let them rest. They've had a very hard few weeks. Daniel stood and looked at Solara. If you need anything during the night, anything at all, the house is right there. I'm a light sleeper. Thank you, Daniel, for everything. Solara's eyes were already half closed, her body finally allowing itself to rest now that Pip was safe and fed. Daniel ushered Amy out of the barn and back to the house. Getting her ready for bed took longer than usual because she wouldn't stop talking about Pip and asking questions about dragons and wondering if they could be friends forever. Daniel answered as best he could, though truthfully he knew almost nothing about the Sarath beyond basic facts. Finally, Amy was tucked in, still chattering as her eyes drifted closed. Daniel kissed her forehead and turned off the light, leaving her door cracked open the way she liked. In the kitchen, Daniel surveyed the damage from the evening. Every pot was dirty, the counter was covered in food scraps, and the sink was full. He should clean it, should prepare for tomorrow, should figure out how he was going to feed 2 dragons and himself on rapidly dwindling supplies. Instead, he grabbed his coat and a blanket and walked back outside. The night was clear and cold. Stars scattered across the sky in patterns different from Earth's. Daniel settled onto the porch steps, wrapping the blanket around himself. He wasn't sure why he'd come out here. Just a feeling that he should be nearby. He'd been sitting there for maybe 20 minutes when he heard movement from the barn. A moment later, Solara's head emerged from the doorway. She looked at Daniel and something passed between them, an understanding that needed no words. Solara pulled herself out of the barn carefully, leaving Pip sleeping warm inside, and made her way to where Daniel sat. She settled onto the ground beside the porch, her head level with where he sat. "Could not sleep?" she asked quietly. "Old habit. After Rebecca died, I used to sit up at night, just watching, making sure nothing else went wrong, making sure Amy was safe." Daniel pulled the blanket tighter. "Eventually I got better, but tonight feels like those early nights. I understand. Since Torin died, I have not truly slept, always watching, always listening, always afraid something would take Pip too." Silara's breath made clouds in the cold air. "Tonight is the first time I feel I can rest, because I am not alone in the watching." They sat together in comfortable silence, 2 parents keeping vigil over sleeping children. Above them, the stars wheeled slowly across the sky. In the distance, some night creature called out and another answered. "Tell me about Torin," Daniel said eventually. "What was he like?" Silara's eyes grew distant, strong, brave, but also gentle with Pip. He would sing to her, old songs his mother taught him. Dragon songs have no words, only sounds, but they carry meaning. He sang of safety, of warmth, of being loved. She paused. "What was Rebecca like?" "Brilliant, funny. She could fix anything, figure out any problem. But she was also kind. She always saw the best in people even when they didn't deserve it." Daniel smiled at the memory. "Amy has her mother's laugh. Sometimes I hear it, and for just a second I forget Rebecca's gone." Pip has Torin's eyes. Same color, same shape. When she looks at me certain ways, I see him looking back. They fell quiet again, but it was a peaceful quiet, the kind that comes from shared understanding. Around them, the homestead settled into nighttime rhythms. The wind calmed. The heating units in the barn hummed steadily. Inside the house, a light clicked off as the auto timer activated. "Daniel," Solara said after a while, "what happens now?" "After I heal, the colony will eventually learn of us. They will not allow a dragon to live so close to human settlement. Then we figure that out when it happens, one problem at a time." Daniel looked at her, this massive creature who'd been willing to risk everything for her child. "But you're not leaving until you're ready." "Until you and Pip are both healthy and strong. I don't care what the colony thinks. You would defy your own people for us?" "I would do what's right." "There's a difference." Solara made that rumbling sound again, the one from earlier. Daniel was starting to recognize it as a sound of deep emotion, something between a purr and a hum. "You are strange, Daniel, of humans. Strange and good. You're not so bad yourself." Silara of the Sirath. They kept their watch together through the long night, trading stories about their lost partners, about their children, about the strange path that had brought them together. As dawn began to color the eastern sky, they finally rose, stiff and cold, but somehow less burdened than before. Inside the barn, Pip was awake and chirping for breakfast. Inside the house, Amy would be waking soon, asking to see her new friend. Life was calling, and despite everything, it felt good to answer. "Come on," Daniel said, stretching his sore back. "Let's feed these kids before they revolt." Silara's rumbling became something that almost sounded like laughter. "Yes, let us be proper parents and fulfill our most important duty." "Which is?" "Feeding small ones who are always hungry." This time Daniel's laugh was real and full, echoing across the quiet morning. And in that moment, despite the challenges ahead, despite all the reasons this shouldn't work, it felt like everything might actually be okay. Morning light filtered through the barn windows, catching dust particles and making them dance like tiny stars. Daniel stood at the makeshift cooking station he'd set up in the corner, preparing breakfast for 4 instead of 2. Amy sat in the bedding with Pip, teaching the baby dragon how to play a simple clapping game. Every time Pip managed to tap her claws together in rhythm, Amy cheered like it was the greatest accomplishment in the world. Solara watched from her resting spot, her eyes bright and clear, in a way they hadn't been the night before. The antibiotics were already working, Daniel could tell. She was still in pain, but the fever that had been lurking behind her eyes was gone. So Pip needs about 40 pounds of food a day when she's healthy, Daniel said, stirring a large pot of meat and broth. How much do you need, Solara? For myself, much less. Perhaps 20 pounds when Wing is healed and I am active. Now maybe 10 is enough. Daniel did the mental math. 50 pounds of meat per day. His current livestock wouldn't support that for long, and hunting enough to make up the difference was beyond his skills. He'd have to go to the colony market, which meant explaining things, or at least coming up with a convincing lie. I will help provide, Solara said as if reading his thoughts. When Wing is stronger, I can tell you where prey animals gather. You can hunt with your rifle. I can track. That could work. Daniel portioned out the food, giving Pip the largest share, though I'm still a terrible shot. Then I will teach you. It is small payment for your kindness. Amy brought Pip over to eat, and the baby dragon dove into her meal with enthusiasm. She'd already grown noticeably since last night. Her scales brighter, her movements more coordinated. Dragon healing was apparently incredibly fast when they had proper nutrition. As they ate together, Daniel found himself thinking about the future. Not just the immediate problems of food and keeping Solara's present secret, but the bigger picture. What would happen in a month when Solara's wing healed? Would she and Pip leave, going back to their nomadic life? The thought made something in his chest ache. Amy seemed to be having similar thoughts. Dad, she said quietly, leaning against his side. When Pip gets all better, does she have to go away? Daniel looked at Solara, who had gone very still. That's up to Solara, sweetheart. This is their home, the mountains and the wild places. We can't ask them to give that up. But what if they wanted to stay? Amy pressed. Would that be okay? The question hung in the air. Daniel saw the conflict in Solara's eyes, the same conflict he felt. The logical answer was no. Dragons and humans didn't live together. Their species had barely made contact, and when they had, it usually ended in violence or fear. The colony would never accept a dragon living on one of their homesteads. But then he looked at Amy and Pip, who were already grooming each other. Amy carefully picking bits of food from between Pip's scales while Pip gently preened Amy's hair with her tiny teeth. He looked at Solara, this fierce, intelligent being who understood grief and love and sacrifice in ways that transcended species. I think, Daniel said slowly, that we have some time before we have to decide anything. Let's focus on getting everyone healthy and strong first. Then we'll figure out the rest together. Solara's rumbling purr filled the barn. Wise words. I would like that. To figure it out together. After breakfast, Daniel set about organizing the barn properly. He created separate areas for sleeping, eating, and storage. He rigged up better lighting and reinforced the heating system. Amy helped by decorating Pip's sleeping corner with drawings and collecting interesting rocks from the yard to give Pip something to play with. As Daniel worked, he found himself planning long-term, where he could expand the barn if needed, how to set up a hunting rotation, ways to gradually introduce the idea of Solara's presence to the colony authorities. It was terrifying and complicated and probably impossible. But then Pip would chirp happily at one of Amy's jokes, or Solara would offer a piece of advice about the barn layout, and it would feel not just possible but necessary. Around midday, Amy insisted on reading another story. This time, Pip climbed right into her lap, curling up like a scaly cat, while Amy's voice filled the barn with tales of adventure and friendship. Solara listened too, her head resting on her forearms, and Daniel could see her relaxing in a way that went beyond physical healing. Your young one reads well, Solara commented when Amy finished, and picks good stories. Stories of bravery and loyalty. Her mother used to read to her every night, Daniel said. Amy's kept up the tradition. Pip will remember this. Dragon memories are long. She will tell her own children someday about the small human who was kind to her when she was dying. The thought of Pip growing up, having children of her own, struck Daniel as both beautiful and slightly terrifying. How big would she get? Dragons could live for centuries, he'd heard. Would she remember them when they were gone? Dad, can Pip and I go play outside? Amy asked. I want to show her the chickens. Stay in the yard where I can see you. And Amy, the chickens are not toys for Pip. I know, Dad, we're just going to look. Amy and Pip bounded outside and Daniel watched through the window as they explored the yard together. Pip was fascinated by everything, from the chickens to the fence posts to the clouds moving overhead. Amy narrated it all, pointing and explaining in that patient way children have. This is how it should be, Silara said softly. Young ones of different peoples playing together, learning together. If more could see this, perhaps there would be less fear. Maybe, Daniel agreed, or maybe we're just two families who got lucky, who found each other at the right time. Luck, fate, need. Perhaps it does not matter what we call it. Silara shifted, wincing slightly as her wing moved. What matters is we are here now, and we have choice in what comes next. Daniel turned to face her fully. What do you want to come next, Silara, really? She was quiet for a long moment, watching through the window as Pip and Amy chased each other in circles. I want Pip to grow strong. I want her to learn about the world, both Seraph and human. I want her to know she does not have to fear, does not have to hide. Silara's eyes met Daniel's. And I want to stay here if you will have us. Not forever, perhaps, but for now. For as long as it works, the colony will be problem, yes. But we face together, yes? You, me, Amy, Pip. We are family now, I think. Strange family, but family all the same. Family. The word resonated in Daniel's chest, filling spaces that had been empty for too long. He'd thought it would always be just him and Amy against the world. But here was Silara, offering something he hadn't even known he needed. Partnership. Support. Understanding. Yeah, Daniel said, his voice rough with emotion. We're family. And families stick together no matter what. Silara's rumbling purr was the loudest he'd heard yet, a sound of pure contentment. Outside, Amy's laughter mixed with Pip's chirping, creating a melody that spoke of joy and hope and new beginnings. Daniel joined Silara at the window, and together they watched their children play in the morning sun. The future was uncertain, full of challenges they'd have to face. The colony would have questions. Silara's wing would take time to heal. Resources would be tight, but right now in this moment none of that mattered. Right now, there was warmth and safety and the simple happiness of not being alone anymore. A father and a dragon mother, both shaped by loss, both fierce in their love for their children. Two families becoming one, bridging the gap between species with nothing more than compassion and a willingness to trust. It wasn't the life Daniel had planned. It wasn't the life Silara had expected. But as Amy taught Pip how to make flower crowns and both children wore them with equal pride, Daniel realized it was exactly the life they both needed. And that was more than enough.